of appointment. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion on this? Councilor Manna.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I do have some questions for Attorney Goldberg, if that's possible.
I believe she's here tonight, so she would like to come forward, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Attorney Goldberg. I had the opportunity to read, reread, and reread this, and the proposed amendments is to revise the charter from June 6, 2003, that was adopted by the voters of the town of Southbridge. And looking through this, I see where there's a number of sections that are going to be repealed. My question was, this charter is no longer in existence, and neither are the sections that they want repealed, as we have a new charter that was voted on in 2013. And I believe there may have also been some amendments between 2003 and 2010. I'm not sure. I didn't have access to get that charter. So I have a lot of concerns about that. How can something be voted on if it doesn't exist?
Certainly.
Thank you. Lauren Goldberg, Copeland and Page.
Can you
Yes,
thank you
thank you.
very much.
The petition proposes to reestablish the form of town government that existed prior to the current town council form of government. As I think I mentioned the last time I was here, but I'd like to reiterate, I don't believe that if this petition were rejected by the council tonight, presented to the voters, and then approved by the voters, that the general court would enact a special act that looks like the petition that's been submitted to the town council. I do believe that it would need to be revised by the House Council and Senate Council to actually put forward a piece of legislation that looked like a charter. That is not what this is. And I do think there are several provisions in this petition that would need to be clarified in order to determine exactly what charter would be the charter for the town of Southbridge. That being said, and I hope I'm not being too lengthy here, but what the language you have in front of you does is summarize what the petition is saying so that voters can understand what's being proposed. Nevertheless, if this is approved, what goes up to the legislature isn't just the question, the certified vote on the question that's presented to the voters, but the actual piece of legislation that the council is being asked to adopt itself. So in terms of could you revise a charter that doesn't exist, essentially what the petition proposes is to reestablish a previous version of the town's governance. It's not simply to just revise the current charter by taking out one piece and inserting another.
Okay, and I did have another question, but I'm not sure if you could answer that, and that is the revised bylaws that this wants to go back to was adopted June 6, 1956, and was in effect until 1973, until they had the new form of government that was voted on by the town of Southbridge. And in Section 6, Article 3, Section 6, where it says town meetings, 150 registered voters at any town meeting for the transaction of business shall constitute a quorum. I guess my question would be, where did they get that number? And can that number be changed? I'm confused on that number because that's quite a bit of people that you need to get at a town meeting to move your government to go forward if they're going to be voting on the warrants and whatnot.
Mr. Chairman. I can't answer that question. I don't know where they got the number of 150, but I think that question provides a little bit of support for the position that I was just explaining, which is there would need to be some massaging of the actual petition that's been submitted, because how you undo years of legislative work and go back to a previously existing form of government is a challenge. The way that you would typically see a new charter is similar to what you all did last year in terms of your voting for special legislation. You delete one particular provision of your charter and you insert a new provision, or you delete the text of your charter and you insert in its place new text that you have seen and looked at. What's being proposed is more broad than that. It's not drilled down to the actual language. So that, as I suggested, I do think that would be an issue for the general court and something that they would have to work out.
Okay, and just one more. Could we have some kind of a committee? I don't know if it would be elected or if it would be something that our chair would, to review this and discuss this, because this is huge. So your opinion on that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. There is nothing that would prohibit the council from from creating a committee that would be and charge it with studying the proposal and/or the form of the town's government currently, what works, what doesn't work, with an eye to addressing some of the issues that have been raised in this petition. There are always refinements that can be made to a form of town government over time that are vetted and inputs received not only from the voters, which is always important, but also from the town itself, department heads, the council, manager, what works, what doesn't work, what could use review. So certainly there could be a committee appointed to review this proposal or to look at the issue of town governance more generally. And that is something that that towns can do without any special legislative authority, as compared to an elected charter commission, which we discussed, which might do some of the same work, but would only be able to be created by a petition process that originates with the voters themselves rather than with the council.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Certainly. Any other questions? Just want to, again, educate the people, okay? As we said the last meeting, Ms. Dowse came in, presented the petition, and as I said, we are going to have it on this agenda item. So I just want everyone to understand, a no vote sends it on and puts it on the ballot in our June election, okay? A yes vote will send it to our legislation and get it tied up there. But I just want everyone to understand what they're voting for and how they're voting for, so it's clear. Any questions? Council Moriarty.
Not so much a question, just a comment. Obviously, this has been a topic of discussion all over the place. So, and I've heard a lot of people kind of offer up different thoughts and strategy. Vote this way and this will happen. Vote that way, that'll happen, and that sort of thing. And just for clarification, on my end anyways, I'll be voting no solely because I prefer it to go before the people, and if the people decide that this is what they want, then so be it. But, I think that's, for me anyways, I feel that's the most appropriate venue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Carrasco.
Yes, I've been actually very silent on this matter. I've been trying to study, and I don't know the form of government from 1973. I wasn't around. I wasn't born then. But in studying and looking around, also, I don't see the benefit of going back. But if this is what the public wants, and this is what the town of Southbridge wants, therefore I will be voting no and let the town of Southbridge decide. That's all I have.
Councilor Vandal.
I will be voting no also. I want this to go to the people. It's the people's decision. Too big a decision for us to make up here. The people will vote and tell you what they want. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Manna.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have one more question for Ms. Goldberg, through you. in regards to this petition, and if everything is passed, do we now go back to all the bylaws from 1953 through 1973? Do the bylaws that we have now in place, are those all?
Mr. Chairman.
Certainly.
The best answer I can give you is that that would have to be something that the legislature tackles. The petition suggests that that's the case. There may be things that have happened in the interim that should not be interfered with, and that really is something that the legislature would have to look at, and I expect that they would look to the council and/or to the town manager for some guidance as to how to move forward if the voters do pass this and there's and the matter is taken up to the legislature. It is possible that the legislature could say, let's ask the council to come back with its proposal and try to meld the two, or to say that the general court could say X, Y, and Z things aren't things that we believe should be addressed, and that would go through the regular legislative process. There's a public hearing on legislation. It would be scheduled for a hearing, but I also do believe that the town's state representative and state senator would look to the town's people for some guidance, and town government in particular, as to what the implications might be of a petition of this nature.
Thank you.
Councilor Nicola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to state that I, too, will be voting no, specifically for two reasons. One, I believe this is something that the town should be looking at, which will require doing homework, and it's more than just a question on the ballot. It will change the face of government, so I suggest that you do your homework. It's a very big question. And the other reason that I'll be voting no is because I will also be voting no at the polls, and I'm going to be consistent. Thank you.
Certainly. Councilor Clements.
Through you, Goldberg. Is it possible that the legislature would suggest a elected charter commission to get public input, to actually do the process of what they're proposing here? Is that a possibility at all? You know, in terms of getting more input, other than 10 people who designed it?
Mr. Chairman.
Certainly.
My expectation is that they would not suggest an elected charter commission. The legislature gets special act charter amendments and charter adoptions as part of its work, and that would not be unusual. As I indicated earlier, in my experience, proposals that go up to the legislature are more concrete, particularly when they make such a big change to the form of government. In terms of whether they might look for voter input, there would be another way for the legislature to look for voter input, and that would be to request that this question, even if the legislature were able to address some of the substantive issues that are in the petition, the legislature might say, we'll pass this, but we're going to make it subject to voter acceptance, so acceptance by the electorate after there's actual concrete language changes. In the interim, though, they may encourage, rather than an elected charter commission, feedback about what this would actually mean. You know, it's hard to predict with accuracy what they might or might not do, but I can see that they might have some questions and issues with how it would be implemented.
And one more thing. In your experience with other communities that you're aware of, in terms of the quorum rules, regulations, or how people put things into place, is there some type of formula that is used generally? Is there a percentage? Or?
Mr. Chairman, there's not. In my experience, it can range from 0 quorum to 200 voters, maybe a certain number of voters for an annual town meeting versus a different number for a special town meeting. It's really a matter of local policy. There is no general law that sets a quorum for a town meeting, so it's from town to town, it differs. Some towns have a hard time getting a quorum, and so they'll amend their bylaws to reduce the quorum for that reason. Other towns believe it's imperative that you have a certain number of voters appear in order to make sure that the voters' will is being carried out, and so they require that higher quorum because they want to encourage voter participation or a minimum level of voter participation.
So it's always possible that the representation that seems to be sought here in this petition isn't necessarily going to be representative of the 10,000 or so voters we have here, 11,000 voters. Well, that, again, that's just my opinion. If you're only looking for 50 people or 100 people to show up at a meeting, if they show up, I'd like to see more just show up at a subcommittee meeting while we're vetting the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Certainly.
Mr. Chairman, members of the council, my name is Michael Caplet, and I'm an attorney, excuse me, here in Southbridge with an office at 3 Boland Avenue. And I represent the sponsors of the petition that has been put before you tonight. And just to echo what Attorney Goldberg said, the issue for the council tonight is to decide whether or not either A, to submit this to the legislature by an affirmative vote.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Is Mr. Capelet a resident of Southbridge? And if not, should we be voting for him to speak?
We
If I may, I'm not a resident of Southbridge.
He's not a resident of Southbridge, but if...
I believe those are the rules from the
Yeah.
past, so I want to be consistent with the rules. I don't want to...
Motion?
Second.
Any discussion on this? All in favor? Go ahead, Mr. Caplet.
Thank you. The issue is either A, that the town council approves this petition and submits it with its approval to the state legislature. And as Attorney Goldberg pointed out, it won't be just the question that goes up, it'll be the whole body of the petition. And the thrust of the petition, she quite rightly points out, is to go back to the town meeting Board of Selectmen form of government that Southbridge had until 1973. And there's no question that there are a myriad of details that would have to be worked out if that was to occur. The other option is to deny the petition, which, quite frankly, sensing the will of the council tonight, that seems to be where the council is headed, not trying to predict how you're going to vote, but that is precisely what the sponsors would prefer. They would prefer to see the voters of Southbridge act upon it in June at the annual town election. Let the voters have their say whether they want to change the form of government or not. The alternative, as has been suggested, could be a very lengthy and protracted period of waiting. We don't know what the legislature is going to do. You don't know what it is they're going to do or when they're going to do it. And one of the issues that struck me tonight, again, and I was here at the April 7th meeting, when the town manager search committee reported back that they had to put their efforts on hold pending the result of this. And again, that could put this town, again, in a period of a suspended animation, as it were, nothing happening until the legislature acts. But having said that, if we wait until the legislature acts and then comes back for a vote at that point, it will give a clear indication that we're going to be waiting that much longer. And that sounds like double talk, and perhaps it is. But what the voters should do is act upon this in the June election, have some clear guidance as to where the town is heading. And that's what the sponsors would request of this town council tonight. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you.
If I may, just 2 questions. One is that many towns, as Attorney Goldberg suggests, have 0 quorums. Sturbridge, for instance, which I have a great deal of familiarity being the town moderator there, has a 0 quorum in Sturbridge for its town meetings. There was another question raised by Mrs. Clemens at the last meeting as to salaries for all these people. Right now at Sturbridge, I can report there is no salary for the Board of Selectmen, town moderator, and the other various boards. There is a stipend study committee which is conducting an investigation as to whether they should return to a stipend situation. The stipends that they apparently are going to recommend would total up to be about $18,000 for a variety of boards. But that would be up to the voters, as it always is, as part of the annual budget.
Councilor Clements.
Thank you. If I may, through you, Mr. Chair, it was reported in the paper that there were a number of people, 10 people or so, that put this petition together. Could you tell us who they were?
I could not tell you all the names. I can tell you they are primarily, 5 of them are seated in the front row here. I do not know all the names who put the petition together. I edited the petition. I did not author it. James Marino, who's in the front row, is the primary person I've had dealings with and contact.
But is it your understanding it was 10 people who suggested
I don't
the
know how
petition?
many
You don't
it
know,
was.
okay.
But
I
know
just read
that-
that in the paper, so I
I
was
know that
curious.
approximately 700 people signed the petition, so I think that's more than 10.
Some duplicate.
You all set, Counsel?
Yeah, I'm all set, thank you.
Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. With all due respect, that's Sturbridge you're talking about, and we're Southbridge, and we're totally different from Sturbridge. And you may have gotten 700 signatures. I want to know if they read every word in this petition. That's my question, and I don't think you can answer that for me.
I was not present when they signed it.
Thank
I couldn't
you.
possibly answer that, no.
All set?
I think, however, I am one of the few people in this room that attended the last town meeting that was held here in Southbridge. In those ancient days of yore, I was the recreation director for the town of Southbridge, where I was born and raised and lived until 1986.
Thank you. And I also spoke to a former selectman, and his reason for going to a town manager form of government, they told me, was the town was getting too large. They were part-time and they had full-time jobs. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Just, again, a spirit to move things on, they presented the petition. And again, I feel the same way. I mean, if we don't act, and personally, I am going to vote no. And the reason why I'm going to vote no is this government is in limbo right now. As you did state, we suspended our town manager search. We're just in limbo. So I'm sure over the next 7 weeks, there's going to be much debating on both sides. They'll have time, and as Councilor Nicole said, they have to do their due diligence and do their homework, and you hope the citizens do their homework. But to have just an open debate going back and forth on this, which is plenty of time, they came before us with a petition, certified 600 and something, almost 700. I don't have to agree with it all. But they did their due diligence, and now it's up to us to either put it on the ballot or let it get lost in the shuffle for a while, and then our government is not going to move forward. So I believe I'm ready to vote. I don't know if anyone else is. Any other discussion on this? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Counselor Clements?
No.
Counselor Langevin?
No.
Counselor Manna?
No.
Counselor Marcucci? No. Counselor Moriarty?
No.
Counselor Nicola?
No.
Counselor Vandal?
No.
Counselor Krasko?
No.
8 no.
Thank you. This will be on the ballot in June.